Hey, it's Juck. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth. We're Ohioans. He's got it all, man. He's even got the jaw. You know the jaw. You see that jaw, and you're just like, yeah, man, that's a dude. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. Hey, that's not me. There we go. Hey, friends, how we doing? Oh, Free Juck Tuesday. Yeah. Hey, welcome into Juck on Bucks. Appreciate y'all so. This is not Juck on Bucks. This is Buckeye Huddle Primetime. But get it together, pal. Buckeye Huddle Primetime here, as always, Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Appreciate you guys so much for joining me. We got a lot to get to tonight. A huge weekend of football behind us. An even bigger one ahead of us as we are just kind of racking up the data points here 4 weeks in. And next Saturday, the Big Ten really heats up. Now, I got a message from a fan of my show probably 25 minutes ago, and he had watched the morning show. And he said he's a Georgia fan, right? But he likes to keep up with the enemy, so he watches all the enemy shows. He told me that he feels like it's probably the first time he's ever said this in his life, but the Big Ten, 6 or 7 teams deep, is better than the SEC this year. So their fans even starting to admit this now. And honestly, a big step forward from last year, even in the Big Ten. The Big Ten right now is hard as hell. We're going to talk about that today. I don't think it's a 4-team playoff league again this year. I think that's a lock. I think there's a few scenarios where we could see the Big Ten potentially get a 5th team in the playoffs, and I'll lay that out. But we all know eventually there will be 5 Big Ten teams in the playoffs because the leader of the Big Ten and his most powerful AD, Ross Bjork, stumping for an ever-expanding playoff. We got another clip of Ohio State AD Ross Bjork going over his plans for the playoff, what he would like to see with Adam Brenneman. But game number 4 for the Buckeyes, game number 1 in the Big Ten slate, Washington, Husky Stadium. I love the setting. Damon Williams Jr., Jonah Coleman, Denzel Boston, the 3-headed monster out there. The top 25 just came out. I've now watched Washington play 2 games, one against Colorado State, one against Washington State. They haven't played anybody worthy of ranking them, but neither has Penn State. I just don't think anybody's really seen Washington. They're good. They've got some weak spots, but they're really, really good. And I was pretty amazed when I watched them at the caliber of player that they had on the roster, because this is a roster that when Jedd Fisch took over last year was totally stripped down from Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer leaves, bunch of guys transferred with him, bunch of guys went to the NFL, bunch graduated, and Jedd Fisch didn't have much to work with last year, did a good job, but they're good, and they got players everywhere. This morning, that line was Ohio State minus 9.5. It's now Ohio State minus 8.5. So the money moving on to Washington. And that's the number 1 team in the country that's coming out to play them. So really big time stuff for Jedd Fisch, who's a really good coach. Little over, just a touchdown underdog against the number 1 team. So we'll get into that a little bit more tonight. It was announced not too long ago that the Minnesota game at the Shoe will be a night game. How about that? A night game at Ohio Stadium against a Big Ten opponent. I didn't think we would see that this year. Here we go. Minnesota, coming into the year, I thought would be a pretty formidable opponent, a good quality team. Then last weekend, Minnesota went out and lost to Cal. Cal, who just got beaten by San Diego State 34-0. Cal, who's in a total rebuilding year, starting the freshman quarterback instead of Devin Brown, which means Minnesota is not that good, and it better be a bloodbath in front of a bunch of recruits that Ohio State brings in that they're trying to flip, and they are trying to flip quite a few. A couple of them I think they're kind of wasting their time on, but we'll talk about that more tomorrow, both on Juck on Bucks, where I've got some recruiting talk to do, and then later on, Mark and I are doing a Skull Session episode here on Buckeye Huddle Primetime. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at a comment here that I'm going to make sure I star and get back to this. As my guy Rod is having the SEC conversation, SEC Big Ten conversation, which we'll have. We will have it today. But we start today with the commitment of Angelo Smith, and I'm really excited about this. It's a calculated gamble, right? Angelo Smith, Jeremiah Smith's little brother, said Ohio State felt like home to me, wouldn't feel right anywhere else. And back in June, the Buckeyes did something I was really hoping they would do when they offered Angelo. Now, Angelo came into camp at that time over the summer, second year in a row. And the first time he was up at camp, he was working with Hartline in the wide receivers. That was after his freshman year. Very good route runner, looked like a natural little wide receiver. But the second time, after the sophomore year, he came up, he was working with Matt Guerrieri and Walt. And they offered Angelo on defense. So obviously Jeremiah next year will be his last year. There will be no crossover between little brother and big brother. I doubt there was any pressure here for the offer, but I think that they really wanted him on the team, not just because it's Jeremiah's little brother, but could you imagine if you didn't take him, if you didn't offer him? And look, I don't know how many of you guys know this. He's listed at 5'10". People are out here reporting that he's 5'10". He's not 5'10". He's probably closer to 5'8" than he is to 5'10". And that's why he doesn't have many offers. But what if you don't offer Jeremiah Smith's little brother and he goes down to Miami and grows 4 inches and becomes a All-American safety, and you didn't take him because you thought he was too short? Jeremiah's little brother. Like, you'd be kicking yourself forever. But of course, he has to have the prerequisite athleticism and skill, which he obviously does. That's apparent on his film. In addition to that, and why I really wanted him to get the offer, Angelo is a total dog. He is a total dog, and I don't say that just lightly. He is a different kind of cat, and you feel like, honestly, a good comparison for him is Jalen McClain, to be honest, and it's kind of convenient as everybody's hip to Jalen McClain all of a sudden. But Angelo, a 3-star prospect at 24/7, not ranked at on 3. He is the country's number 32 safety per their rankings, number 400 player overall, which is almost a 4-star. So almost a blue chipper. Is 24/7 slightly overrating him because he's Jeremiah's brother? I think they are, but they also don't hide the fact that they include genetics in their projections. They do it right there on the page. They list if you got an uncle that played college football, or if your aunt on your mom's side was a sprinter for Missouri. Like, they list it all there, and they believe in that, and I kind of do too. But as a safety at Chaminade Madonna, they won the state championship, 1A in Florida. He had 40 tackles, 11 pass breakups, 3 picks, plays with the South Florida Express. And many think that this has just got to do with JJ. It's a throwaway offer, and maybe it is a bit of a flyer. But the scholarship limit has gone from 85 up to 105. And while it does take a slight hit on your cap, right, for each guy you take, it does allow you to take a couple extra flyers every year. And I think that the majority of these flyers should be used for in-state prospects, guys that you know are going to be excited to be on your team. They bring that extra Ohio culture with them, and guys that are less likely to transfer out and wait their turn and be happy about that. But particularly flyers from in-state on the offensive and defensive lines. I think those are where you primarily want to spend those. But this one certainly qualifies, without a doubt. And as we look at Jalen McClain, who's kind of just scratching 6 foot, has struggles keeping his weight up, Angelo's 15. And I don't think it's uncommon to see a kid grow 4 inches from 16 to 20, right? Jeremiah grew quite a bit after Ohio State offered him. He grew after his freshman year in college. And also, we're talking about Jeremiah Smith's full-blooded brother. Let's be honest here, man. You got to take that kid. Jeremiah is almost 6'4" now. I think the odds that he hits at least 5'11" are pretty good. And under 6 foot, not ideal at Ohio State. But let's pretend for a second Jalen McClain was 5'11". Take an inch off Jalen McClain and a half inch off his arms. Is he still Jalen McClain? I think he is. But when Mark and I did our skull session probably 3 weeks ago, when we first talked about Angelo on the show, we both said the same thing. We both were waiting to say it, and it was his competitiveness. The kid plays with a chip on his shoulder, like everybody's looking at him, like, you're Jeremiah's little brother. Why are you so small? That's how he plays, man. It comes through. I'll show you. He's a dog. Unfortunately, we don't have a ton of film on him, but we do have some. And I'm going to play you what we got on Angelo. Let me pull my head off of here so it's a little bigger. He's a hitter. He's not afraid to throw his body around. He's got really good closing speed. I think he triggers really, really fast. And he's got good instincts too. Look at him, just letting out. And he's playing against top competition as well. For Chaminade, like this is top tier Florida football here. But you can see, he's small. He's a small kid. He's got the instincts. That was against St. Thomas Aquinas. There's a couple clips of him. This is against Diabell right here. He reads this perfectly. Brings down Dia. What's this one here? Boom! Give me that. Not scared to use that smaller body, for sure. Love that one too. So that's a little bit of our guy. Sorry, guys. Anyway, I was surprised that ultimately the offers were only there from Ohio State, Miami, Oklahoma State, and like Toledo and Akron, which Oklahoma State is unfortunately kind of like Toledo and Akron these days. Who wouldn't want to take a flyer on Jeremiah Smith's little brother hitting a 6-inch growth spurt? Because I'm telling you, man, if he does grow 6 inches, you got a potential 5-star for like taking a flyer, and that would be amazing. Plus, now you got the 5-star with the attitude, 5-star talent and size with that attitude, which he's got that attitude, and I love it. Just that underestimated attitude. So he joins the class of 2027. The class of 2027 obviously has Jameer Brown in it, the number 1 wide receiver in the country, and Brady Edmonds, who I think is a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the country, 247, dropped him way down the rankings. Ironically, he was the very first kid out of the top 25 quarterbacks to commit. And as soon as he did, the very next rankings update, he got dropped way down, which is, we know the game here. We know the game. There's a lot less interest in you when you are committed. They have much less to sell when you're a solid commitment. So they dropped Brady down. Brady's the dude. Brady just had 7 touchdown passes a couple weeks ago. Well, 5 throwing, 2 running because he's mobile as well. Got a cannon for an arm and he's 6'5". But I really like that class. Really like that class. Anyway, quote, I remember it not being as loud, but no, it's known as being loud, right? So we got to make sure we don't give them an opportunity to be loud. If you let them get loud, they'll get loud. We did a good job in that game, and we didn't really have much exposure to that. That's Brian Hartline from last Tuesday, and he was talking about his trip out to Washington as a Buckeye player with Jim Tressel in 2007. And Hartline went out to Seattle to play the Huskies. Buckeyes won big that day. He had 5 catches for 88 yards and a touchdown. And he went on to say that Todd Beckman threw him a touchdown, which was awesome. He landed on somebody's foot and hurt the heck out of his back. As for preparation, they're going to be operating like they won't be able to hear themselves this Saturday. That's for sure, because the place is known for its noise. It's a great environment. I think it's one of the best environments on the West Coast that you can find. So we're looking forward to getting back out there. So that's what Hartline had to say. What might we see offensively from these Buckeyes with Brian Hartline in his first? We talk about Julian, right? Making his first road start, his first Big Ten start. It's Hartline's too. He's had to call one big-time game. Some people don't even think he called it against Texas. I think he called the game. I think he called it very unselfishly, as Ryan Day said. But going out to Washington, I don't suspect it's going to be a similar game plan to that. There's been a lot more trust built up in Julian since that game. The Huskies defense so far has given up 7 touchdowns, and that's against Colorado State, Cal State Fullerton, and Washington State. So I was digging into what they're saying over there on their side of things, what the Washington State writers are saying, etc. They're not happy about their defense. They were very unhappy with the performance against Washington State, and they feel pretty lucky that they were able to come out of that with a big win. And they gave up 24 points, but they created 3 turnovers. They feel like if they didn't get those turnovers, a couple of which were very lucky, they would have given up a lot more points. So they're not too happy. When we look at the personnel, they have got enormous cornerbacks. They got corners that are 6'4". Takario Davis, kid number 7, Prysock. This kid's huge. So is their safety, McLaughlin, who I think he at least had 1 pick, might have had 2. But these are big kids back there, and they play aggressively for Ryan Walters, Purdue's head coach that got fired. He is now their defensive coordinator, and he's an aggressive dude, likes to play man. Obviously, if they want to take their chances playing man against Jeremiah and Carnell, be my guest, man. I would love to see that. If this guy thinks that they can handle it, it's only a matter of, are they going to make sure that they let Julian cut it loose? And I certainly think they will. We'll hear what Ryan Day has to say about it tomorrow at the press conference. But when it comes to who is susceptible in this defense, they gave up 7 receptions to Washington State's slot receiver, and they had pretty crappy tight ends as well. So looking at Ohio State, might it be a game where we see Brandon Inniss really get involved? Potentially Max Clare. It seems like it might fit. But as always, this will hinge on the road with the running game. It'll hinge on the running game, and we should see this running game continue to get better throughout the season. Obviously, their biggest test since Texas, where they only ran for 2 yards a carry, hoping we see a whole heck of a lot better than that. And the running game so far has been pretty okay with CJ Donaldson and James Peoples. Of course, we've seen a couple big hitters with Bo Jackson, but truth be told, Bo Jackson seems to be able to turn the 3 yards into 5 yards and the 6 yards into 8 or 9 yards compared to the other two. But he's a freshman, and it's on the road in a really loud environment. How much can you trust him? It's going to tell us a lot how they feel about Bo moving forward by how they use him, right? So a freshman quarterback and a freshman running back that you're relying on to kind of be the dude sounds like a pretty sticky situation, going along with a freshman coordinator. This all sets up for kind of it's a sketchy environment. It is. And a lot of people are nervous about it, but they're more nervous about Washington's offense. Washington's offense is kind of juggernauty, right? Like these guys have scored, I believe, on 20 straight possessions. And this is a really good team, which explains the line movement, obviously. But do they have what it takes to win the game? Can they win this game? And I think they absolutely can win the game, providing the circumstances align. The crowd gets into it. They get a couple turnovers and win the turnover battle and keep it close enough that they can win in the end. But the key to this game, without a doubt, the running game. I don't expect it's going to be some vanilla passing game. You got to open it up a little bit to make sure you can support that running game, because that's the key. So I think they're going to take some shots. I think they're going to unleash Julian a little bit. And I think we're going to see some Brandon. I think we're going to see some Brandon Inniss. And Brandon, just like Angelo Smith, getting tired of hearing it, man. He got a chip on his shoulder already, and he's a dog. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a big game by BI here. Now, Matt Patricia on the other side of the ball, slowing down Washington. Obviously, it starts with Damon Williams Jr., who is a supreme playmaker at 5'11", 200 pounds. He's a playmaking quarterback, and Jed Fish talked after the Apple Cup that he recruited him to be a playmaker. He said he's fine with him working outside the offense. He encourages him to do that because that's who he is, and I love that. Just from a coach's point of view, that guy's really special. Let him go be special. There's no doubt he is special, and it's no doubt that high on the list of the Buckeyes' priorities will be making him feel it and pay for it every time he leaves that pocket. They're going to try to thump the hell out of him. Of course, he is used to that. Everybody, I'm sure, tries to take that tact with him, but I can't wait to see it because he's never seen a defense like Ohio State. And I personally don't feel like we've ever seen at Ohio State a defense more perfectly suited for a quarterback like this. with the speed at linebacker, or the speed at all levels. I don't know that we've ever collectively seen a defense that just appears so fast on the field. Arvell Reese, without a doubt, will be heavily employed as a spy. We've seen him play that role against Arch. We saw him a little bit against Grambling. We saw it again against Parker Navarro in Ohio. He has exceeded at this, and he looks like he was made to do it. But when they watch that one play where Arvell swatted the ball and it ended up being an incompletion, but Kenyatta picked it up and ran into the end zone, there is an angle from the camera that was right behind Arvell's helmet, and it just followed Arvell and Navarro's helmets. Were just tracking back and forth, just in perfect sync. And then Parker Navarro rolls out to the left to throw the ball. And he clearly thinks he has plenty of time to get this ball off as Arvell starts to close. And by the time he releases the ball, obviously Arvell is like right in his grill. And he was so frustrated by how fast he closed that he tried to kick Kenyatta's legs. I mean, that wasn't his normal behavior. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say that was just a straight up frustration move, because Arvell can cover ground much faster than these guys think, because he's just too damn big. It doesn't make sense. This offense really good at utilizing running back Jonah Coleman in the passing game. Jonah Coleman built like Maurice Jones-Drew, a little spark plug. He caught 6 balls, maybe 7 balls. I think all of them were in a couple yards of the line of scrimmage, and he gained over 75 yards on those catches. And the reason that he was able to do that is because those linebackers were so consumed with not letting Damon Williams beat them in the run game that they were not playing assignment sound football. They were 2 steps behind him, leaking out of the backfield, Jonah Williams or Jonah Coleman, 2 steps behind him. And they were just so consumed because Damon Williams can just destroy you at any time. And I think that's the key for this Buckeyes defense. That's the key. Understanding that this guy is going to get his every now and again, playing disciplined, assignment, fundamentally sound football. And if they can do that, they'll get theirs. They'll score 17, 24 points. And the Buckeyes might just have to live with that. But when we look at that Washington State program, really slow, unathletic linebackers. And honestly, that program gave up 59 points to North Texas the week before. So basically, they've allowed the opposing team to score on almost every possession against them. And they were pretty trash. But even as trash as they were, I watched them give that Washington offensive line fits at some points in the game. The Washington offensive line seems to have some holes, and I'm looking for the Buckeyes defensive line to take advantage. That offensive line had a hard time picking up stunts. They don't seem to communicate very well. They weren't the greatest one-on-one. The interior of it seemed pretty bad, and this feels like a game where K-Mac and hopefully Eddie Houston can pop out of his little slump he's been in and take advantage of these dudes. That's what I'm looking for. Now, we have lamented for years. One of the mistakes that Washington State was making was getting way into the backfield, trying to beat the tackles. They were getting 5-6 yards into the backfield. Kenyatta Jackson, who has been getting some heat for not having many sacks yet this year, and I think a lot of that has been his assignment has been to get in his position 3-4 yards back, stack, and read and react, and not go full bore at the quarterback. A lot of people have lamented this for many years. Obviously, Jack and JT were forced to do this, cage rushing, etc. That is just the perfect way to play this guy. And I think that we're going to see a lot of that from the ends, and the Buckeyes will try to get the pressure coming from the middle with Atkinson, with Curry. And I think they're going to be successful because of the holes on the interior of that line and the poor communication. So ultimately, I think the Bucs are going to have a pretty good day defensively, but we're also going to see these guys get theirs here and there because they are talented. Their wide receiver, Denzel Boston, no relation to David Boston, big, long. I think he'll be, without a doubt, the best wide receiver Ohio State will face all year. It looks like he could probably play at Ohio State. And, with the exception of Donovan McCauley. Don't forget Donovan McCauley. That's number 1 for the Blue. Remember, they told us he's Calvin Johnson. So Denzel Boston, the second best wide receiver Ohio State will face this year, behind Donovan McCulley. I haven't checked his stats yet this year, but when we look at the rest of the wide receivers on Washington, not a single one of them has more than 3 receptions on the year. So it's a one-man show. It's Denzel or nothing. And that sets up pretty good for a secondary that is, I believe, the best in the country. I think Ohio State can successfully take one wide receiver out of any game and man up those guys who don't appear to be able to do much against anybody else. They're certainly not going to do anything against Ohio State. So ultimately, to me, I think that I'm going to take the Buckeyes to cover that spread. I'm looking at a 31 to 17-ish type score. And if it's 31 to 24, I wouldn't be shocked. But that's how I feel this thing's playing out. I would love to hear how you guys are feeling on Monday, as we got obviously a long way to go till the game. And, who knows? My mind may change. But right now, that's the way I feel that this thing looks. So let's all please like the show. If you're not subscribed to Buckeye Huddle, now would be an excellent time to do so, just for the heck of it. Let's look at that AP poll. I'm going to pull this puppy up. And I know this has been big time fodder to rip the AP poll this year. So I haven't really gotten in on that because I think enough people have successfully made the point that the AP poll has some people that vote on it, that don't belong voting on it, that don't pay attention to it, that are beat writers for specific teams and don't even follow national college football, which makes zero sense at all. But the Buckeyes still number one. They had 52 first place votes. I think Miami got something like 7. And Penn State, Texas, 2 teams that are in the top 10 that still have not beaten a P5 opponent. Why is Penn State number 3? It doesn't make any sense to me why Penn State is number 3. They have not beaten a Big Ten opponent. We're entering week 5. Obviously, they've got a huge test now, so it doesn't matter. But what the heck, man? I just don't get it. I also don't understand why Texas is number 10 ahead of Indiana, who obviously both of them have, Indiana has 3 garbage victories. Texas has 2 garbage victories and a loss, though it's a good loss against Ohio State. Why is Indiana behind them? I think Indiana showed a ton. I think it's a top 10 team. And, I don't want to say I don't think Texas is a top 10 team. I think it is. But that Indiana squad, to me, absolutely looks like a top 10 program. And we are going to get to see what they're really made of here soon. They've got remaining on the schedule Penn State and Oregon. Honestly, they could lose both those games and still make the playoffs as long as they handle business, because the rest of the schedule pretty weak. But a total of 7 Big Ten teams in the top 25. And while it has been fun kind of bragging about the turning of the tables for a lot of fans of Big Ten schools on the SEC, it's not going to be as much fun when the schedule feels like an SEC schedule from 2005. And the disparity in these schedules is huge. If we look at Ohio State's schedule this year compared to next year, it's like night and day. Now, will you still love the Big Ten when you don't have a schedule that looks like this year, like this schedule that we had this year? Because next year, looking at this thing, it is like a murderer's row. You've obviously got the 2 MAC teams. Then you got Texas, your big out of conference. Then you've got Indiana, Iowa, and Nebraska, and Illinois. Those are, on the, the upper side of the middle of the Big Ten. Wait a minute. Let me pull this off of here so you can see the bottom of this guy. Okay, so Oregon, USC, Michigan, Nebraska, Illinois, Iowa, Indiana, Texas. How many top 15 teams do you think are included in there? I think you're looking at quite a few top 15 teams, maybe like 5. Indiana, for sure. Michigan, for sure. Oregon, USC, and Texas. That's 5 teams that'll be in the top 15. I think Texas, Oregon, Indiana, those might all be top 10, maybe even SC. Like, this is an incredibly tough schedule. More than half the schedule, programs that could potentially beat Ohio State. We've never seen anything like it. That's for sure. And, for all the championing of how tough the Big Ten is, it's gonna, it's gonna be really tough from here on out when you get a draw like that. So it can also be a cream cake, like a Indiana schedule this year, which essentially only has Penn State and Oregon. And sometimes you're going to have these years where you get a program that only has 2 tough games, and then you'll get a schedule like Ohio State that has 6 tough games, which is really tough. But anyway, somebody asked me last week about the Oklahoma and Auburn game, because I said that I was rooting for Auburn in that game because John Mateer was the front runner for the Heisman at that point, and I wanted to see him get knocked off because I want a Buckeye to win the Heisman. And they said to me, wouldn't it make sense for us as Ohio State fans to be rooting for Oklahoma? That way, if Texas beats Oklahoma, then Texas will have beaten a better team, therefore making our win against Texas look better. I used to do these mental gymnastics all over the place. The resume mental gymnastics, I did them all the time. And that's just 2 degrees of separation. I would do them like 3 and 4. I was kind of obsessed with it because since the advent of the BCS and then the 14 playoff, you didn't have to go undefeated. You could lose one game and you would still have a shot to make it to the postseason. And sometimes you did, sometimes you didn't. But what mattered was your resume. Every single data point on that resume mattered. How many of those Big Ten teams are going to be ranked? That's going to be on your resume. How was your out-of-conference opponent that you played early on in the season? How did he finish off the season? If you remember 2014, when Ohio State lost to Virginia Tech, the Buckeyes started playing better, and it started looking like, hey, maybe they're going to have a shot to get back in it. And then we're watching this Virginia Tech team who we thought was going to be a good ACC team, nice brand name. Potentially they could compete for the championship, and it would look like a good loss. They kept losing. They ended up losing 7 games that year. It was painful. It was really painful. And every one of those losses felt like a dagger. But recently I saw somebody say, don't you want Michigan to win every game until the last? So they come in at full strength when we play them. And I understand his point, of course. There would be 2 reasons why you would want them to be at full strength. Number 1, to kill their playoff chances. Number 2, the resume. You want to beat the best brand of Michigan you can beat for your resume. Now, Indiana and Illinois just played. We don't play Indiana. We play Illinois. So a lot of people were rooting for Illinois. This is all changed. This resume stuff is all changed. We don't need to do it anymore. We don't need to worry about it. Now, I wasn't one for expansion. I thought 4 was fine. If I had my way, I would have preferred like a 6 to 8 if it was mandatory. Just to make sure that there wasn't another Florida State situation where you get a team that's undefeated that gets screwed like that. But 6, 8 teams, and if there were more programs that it looked like could eventually win a national win the thing, then talk about expanding. And that's because I have what's best for the actual sport and the fan and preserving the tradition at the top of the list for me. The uniqueness of the college football system was totally different, totally unique to the sports landscape. There was nothing else like it. And that's part of the reason I loved it. But I will admit, the first run through the 12-team playoff, even though I didn't like the idea of expanding to 12, it felt great. It was fun. It was exciting. The on-campus playoff games were great. And now with the transfer portal and NIL, it came at the perfect time because now there are more teams who have a shot at winning it, that can win it all. So I took the 12-team playoff process and felt like it was pretty good. Maybe I'm a little skewed because my favorite team won, but it was fun. It was unique. And because it was so successful, all of a sudden they want to expand it again. And we know that it'll be at 16 teams very soon, and on we go. And while I hate that they will continue to grow this, I've grown to accept that I have no control in it. The uniqueness of college football, as far as the postseason format, will no longer exist. It's going to eventually look like the NFL. We all know that. And someone who is pushing for that Tony Petitti, commissioner of the Big Ten. But when we look at Ohio State, as far as those resume gymnastics go, in a 16-team playoff, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, any program with a brand name and a lot of talent never has to worry about getting in with 3 losses. A 9-3 Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, they're in. So that gives you 3 mulligans on the season. Honestly, if you lose more than 3 games, like, do you even want to see Ohio State in the postseason? I will be so mad at them. They won't deserve it. They clearly can't win if they lose 3 games in the regular season. But Ross Bjork was out here stumping for the 28-team playoff again with Adam Brenneman. Here's what Ross had to say last week with Brenneman.
How many teams should be in the college football playoff?
Selfishly, we could go back to 4, and I think Ohio State would be in a good spot most years, right? 12, I think, was great last year. I mean, obviously, we benefited from that by being in the 12-team playoff. Here's what I don't think anyone can argue with. If we have more high-profile games where the regular season means more for more teams, right now you could say that the regular season is probably 12 to 16 to 20 teams, where it means something in November. What if that's 40 teams where we have a shot?
It means something for everybody early on. If you lose, then it doesn't mean things in November.
Games just become way more intense. I don't think anyone can argue with more high-profile football games, with more content that drives more revenue, which then goes back to the players. So if it's 16, 20, 24, 28, to me, that's where we need to get to, because I think that is healthy for the game. I think that creates more interest. If you really think about it, we're playing these games already in a different format. Conference championship games. And then you think about a lot of these high leverage bowl games outside of the New Year's Six. You'll see a 9-3 team play a 10-2 team a lot of times. No one complains about that. If that is housed within a playoff structure, that game gets elevated, right? More viewership. So to me, hopefully we can take a step back. Hopefully we can get through this fall. Look, it may be hard to change some things immediately for 2026, but if we can get through this fall, if we can come up with some good models, everybody gets hung up on the access piece. Automatic qualifiers, at-large bid. Let's take a step back. Let's really look at the data. Let's really study this. We're a proponent of expansion. We're a proponent of automatic qualifying spots. It's probably where it would end up anyway. But hopefully through this fall, we can come up with a good solid plan that everybody can get around, and let's move forward.
I cannot disagree with him more on this. You can't create more high leverage games. And if you're talking about, you're already playing these games, talking about the conference championships. The conference championship participants make the playoffs. Those aren't 2 new teams. Those aren't extra teams. They're just playing a redundant game. So nothing there it doesn't jive. What you're doing is you're taking all the interest off of the quality teams that can win it, and you're going to throw it down on the teams that are just above average, because we're going to walk into every single football season knowing that the top 15 teams, they're all making the playoffs. They're all making it already. So their games are much less exciting, and we're focusing the attention, these high leverage games, on teams like Pitt and NC State, right? Like, who's going to pop up and have that good year and be, an 8-win team out of the ACC that's going to make the playoffs? Like, I'm supposed to be excited about that. This isn't good for the game. This is good for Fox. This is good for Big Ten pockets. This is good for SEC pockets, though they're not coming out and publicly supporting that yet, which is interesting. But I'd love to sit down and have this conversation with Ross. Now, this channel that I'm on right now only has 10,000 less subscribers than that one right there. So maybe he'll come on, talk to some Ohio State folks instead of a Penn State grad like Mr. Brenneman, and we could talk about it. But the first thing I would talk about to Ross, if I had the opportunity to do that, was why is it that we can't get out of this purgatory we've been in for 20 years as Ohio State fans without wearing our proper sleeves. 20 years now. Now, that costs nothing to make that change. Absolutely not a dime to say, look, we are switching in 2026 to our proper jerseys, which we have and we wear only if we make it to a national championship. That would be my first question. Why? That's all I want to know. Because if it was a fan vote, everybody, look, not everybody, but much more than half would side with, yes, we want to go back to our classic striped jerseys, which are now named heritage stripes, which should just be called proper damn sleeves on the jersey. But to his point, of course, I can argue with it. You can argue with it. I don't know if he's pretending like he doesn't know there's a counter argument, but that's the second time I've heard him say that. There's obviously a huge counter argument against the point he's making there. Anyway, that's the route we're headed down. There's no doubt about it. And when we go down that route, does it really matter if the Big Ten or the SEC is tougher? Does it really matter how tough your Big Ten schedule is when you go to 28 teams? And again, if you can lose 3 games in a 16-team playoff as a brand name program, how many games can you lose and still make the playoffs as a brand name program? In a 28-team playoff, can you lose 4 games and still comfortably make it into the playoffs? I think at the point that it gets to a 28-team playoff, then it's just automatically assumed every year you're going to the playoffs. Now, at Ohio State, we could have assumed that for the last 25 years and only missed it like twice, right? With the 12-team playoff. But with the Big Ten now being tremendously harder, if we were to stay in the 12-team playoff, it would not be like that for the next 25 years. Ohio State is going to slip up and lose more games in the next 25 years than they will have prior, just by way of the Big Ten expanding and bringing in better programs. And then programs like Indiana, who have elevated themselves and began spending money and caring about football. Programs like Michigan, quite honestly, has elevated themselves and began caring more about football. Oregon, obviously, coming into the conference. USC is going through a resurgence. You got Nebraska doubling down on spending money and getting better. Obviously, that didn't work out for them over the weekend. We were watching live as Michigan went in and whooped them up pretty good. Can Michigan make the playoff this year? They absolutely can. They absolutely can. When we look at Michigan's schedule right now, obviously they got the 1 loss. Who do they got left? They've got Nebraska they beat Nebraska. They've got Wisconsin. Then they have a huge game in 2 weeks against USC. And that game against USC is enormous because USC right now, they've got at Illinois. If they beat Illinois, they got Michigan and Notre Dame. And then they got Oregon at the end of the season. If they can beat Illinois and then split between Michigan and Notre Dame, they can lose to Oregon and they'll be a playoff team. As far as Michigan is concerned, USC, if they beat them, they got Washington at home for a little retribution from their loss out at Washington last year, and they got Ohio State. If they lose to USC, that's 2 losses. That means the final game of the year, Ohio State goes up in there with the opportunity to knock them out of the playoffs and end whatever Ryan Day's got going on up here with that team. I'm kind of rooting for that. I'm kind of rooting for the playoffs to be on the line for them with Ryan Day, with the opportunity to knock them out. Of course, the huge game this week, we've got Penn State hosting Oregon, both undefeated. And that's a game that at the beginning of the year, I was thinking, absolutely, Penn State's going to win that. It's a whiteout. It's a night whiteout, like a whiteout should be. But the more we've seen these teams play, granted, not great competition, it just doesn't feel like Penn State has elevated in a way that I think many of us assumed that they would. We thought everybody a year older, a couple of decent receivers, and now all of a sudden things would be magically better. They're not. They don't feel that way to me yet. Maybe they can prove everybody wrong welcoming in Oregon, but right now I'm picking Oregon to win that game. And even if they do, if Oregon wins that game, Penn State comes to Ohio State, they can lose the Ohio State game, and they'll still have an opportunity, one more big game, and that's against Indiana, which is now a much bigger game. But if Penn State loses to Oregon and they lose to Ohio State, they're going to need to beat Indiana to make it to the playoffs. There is a chance they could miss out on the playoffs, which would be just so unbelievable in a year where they were supposed to be, the national championship pick, in a year where after 3 weeks, like we just saw in the AP poll, they're still sitting at number 3 in the AP poll, and they haven't played anybody yet. They haven't played a single P5 team. So they're still getting a ton of respect. But all through the Big Ten, there is an opportunity for 5 playoff teams with Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, USC, Indiana. And I got these things broken down into what I think right now are the tiers, with tier 1 being Ohio State and Oregon, just slightly above tier 1B, Penn State and Indiana. I think Indiana had proved it to me. Like, they're right there with these programs. I don't know how they've done it so fast, but they are. I really wanted to deny it for a long time. I didn't want it to be true. I hate Signetti, but it's true. They're that good. In tier 2, I consider SC and Michigan on their own. But tier 3, you've got Washington already, and they're on the come up. So when they get a little bit better, now we're looking at 6 teams at the top of this conference. 6 teams at the top that have huge potential. In Illinois, I think will continue to get better as well. The biggest disappointment, Nebraska is underneath Illinois. You can't see it there. But I got Illinois, Iowa, and Nebraska in tier 4. And I think all those teams, very high quality teams. And essentially everybody but Iowa with an arrow pointing up. Like, everybody is continuing to get better. And that's the difference. That's the difference. We didn't used to have that in the Big Ten. Everybody seemed, outside of Ohio State, content with their standing in the college football world, right? Like, now they're all continually trying to get better, trying to spend the money. And it's both exciting and, somewhat concerning. Let's listen to Angelo Smith. He speaks Miami, so pay attention.
Just having that dog, and yeah, my brother having that dog too. Just how I was growing up, like how I was born, it's just in me.
So, bro, it be hot out here, man. Y'all be really competing, man. Do you eat a certain thing or something like that before you come out here?
Before I came in here, I had Waffle House. Me and my brother went to Waffle House, picked up some Waffle House this morning, yeah.
The offer's gonna start rolling in here soon, bro. Like, if you could go to a school, like what would it be?
Ohio State. I want to go to Ohio State. Like, my brother just compete.
Where you get that from?
I love it. I love it. And I want to run through the most updated Heisman Trophy odds. So we have now got Fernando Mendoza of Indiana, comes out, has one good performance. Obviously, he's got a tremendous build. He throws a tremendous ball. We all knew that coming in, but he now sits at the top of the board, has taken over the top spot over John Mateer. Carson Beck sitting at 3, tied actually with Dante Moore. Then we've got Gunnar Stockton behind them, Josh Hoover of TCU, Joey Aguilar. They're all at plus 1,400. Marcel Reed, Jeremiah Smith at 1,500, and Julian Sayin at 1,600. So 2 Buckeyes still there. We're going to see this move quite a bit here soon. I don't know if I shared with you guys on the show here, but CBS last week had the top 25 quarterbacks in the country. Julian Sayin wasn't on there. Wasn't on the top 25 quarterback list, which really blew my mind. No. Rome says, would we even sniff him if his brother wasn't JJ? He wouldn't even have a 24/7 rating if his brother wasn't JJ. No, he's really small. He's really small. He's not just, on the shorter end, but he's compact. This is, people thinking, okay, this is Jeremiah Smith's brother. both mom and dad, like he's going to hit a growth spurt. But yeah, it's a spot you can afford to take. Mars says, Juck, you always say Ross wants to be loved by the fan base, and I don't disagree at all, but it's like, man, every time he talks, I like him less. I do think he wants to be loved. I do. I think he wants us to really, like, get behind him. And that's why I give him so much props for the improvements to the stadium atmosphere. The fact that, okay, you had a plan, you implemented the plan. Some things worked, some things didn't, but all in all, some things worked. And what I like the most is you got it done. You got it done immediately, right? And hopefully we see the tweaks and the follow through. Like, that to me deserves a ton of respect, because that's stuff we never saw from the past administration, right? We never saw stuff like that. But as far as this goes, we're talking massive money on the line for them to expand the playoff. And I don't even know if he's like, is this really Ross's choice, or are they sitting in a 40-person boardroom and all deciding, okay, what's going to be the official Ohio State position on the expansion of the playoffs? I would lean towards it's more like that, and he's the spokesman for that decision. Gray sleeves matter, says Troy. Proper damn sleeves, says Dan. Absolutely. Gray sleeves, huge numbers, and shiny pants. A great point by Rod. I would also add to that the thicker black stripe on the pants. And then we'd be all set. If we could just take it straight back to Eddie George era, but with the modern jersey, that, look, I wouldn't even mind big shoulder pads again. That was my era. So I wouldn't mind big shoulder pads. I had the biggest shoulder pads you've ever seen. I'll find a picture. They were enormous. They must have come up to my ear. Richie needs gray sleeves. All right, friends. I do appreciate you so much for joining me tonight on Buckeye Huddle Primetime. Sorry for my hiccups tonight. I was prepared. I'm just mixing up my shows, doing a lot of them these days, doing a lot of shows. But please do like the show and subscribe to Buckeye Huddle. You can check out on BuckeyeHuddle.com. I wrote a preview of the game that I love this. So it tells you how long the read is on the website. It's a 7-minute story. That's how I know how long I did. Okay, I did a 7-minute story. That's a lot of words. So I'm really proud of it. I don't know how good it is. Maybe you could let me know. It's on BuckeyeHuddle.com. So I'm getting the hang of it, guys. Getting the hang of it. Having a whole lot of fun. Tomorrow, we'll be down at the press conference. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. Wednesday's edition of Buckeye Huddle Primetime, which we will be back here at 8 p.m., of course, like we always are on Monday and Wednesday. We will also get into the preview of what's to come this weekend. And obviously, we will be live streaming again at 3:30 on Saturday during the Buckeyes game over at Juck on Bucks. So that'll be a lot of fun, too. In addition to that, Mark Givler and I will be doing a episode of Skull Session to talk some recruiting, and that'll be recorded tomorrow, might be airing tomorrow night or maybe Wednesday morning. So at any rate, look out for that one too. So appreciate you guys so much. Have a fantastic night. We'll see you